Thanks for joining me again as we look back at another great classic film. This is a multi-award winning comedy from a multi-award winning director, which stars two great comic actors. Many believe that this was the first ever screwball comedy. It was one of the last pre-code films ever released, and is amongst the best comedies, and some believe amongst the best films ever made. It Happened One Night from 1934. The screenplay was adapted by Robert Riskin from the 1933 short story Night Bus by Samuel Hopkins Adams, but went through a number of rewrites due to difficulties with attaching anyone to either of the two leads. Capra's first choice, Myrna Loy, turned down the role of Ellie Andrews because a recent film set on a bus had failed and she didn't think this film would succeed either. Margaret Sullivan, Loretta Young and Miriam Hopkins also turned down the script, and Constance Bennett was willing to accept the role if she could also produce, but Columbia knocked her back. Bette Davis wanted the role but was under contract with Warner Brothers, and Jack Warner refused. Carole Lombard was unable to accept because the filming schedule would conflict with her work on Bolero at Paramount. Marion Davies was offered the role but MGM refused to loan her out. Growing concerned, Frank Capra turned to playwright Miles Connolly, who suggested the characters be made more sympathetic, which was incorporated into the script within a week. Harry Cohn suggested Claudette Colbert, who had already turned down the role because her last film with Capra was such a disaster. Later she agreed to sign on if her salary was doubled to $50,000 and if her scenes were completed in 4 weeks, so that she could take a planned vacation, and so she was cast. Robert Montgomery turned down the male lead, saying the script was the worst thing he'd ever read, and Frederick March refused the part also. Clark Gable was loaned out by MGM, possibly as punishment for his affair with Joan Crawford, but more likely because MGM did not have a project ready for him, and the studio didn't want to pay his $2,000 weekly salary. So Louis B. Mayer lent him to Columbia for $2,500 per week. Capra realised what a reluctant participant Gable was on the first day of shooting when he said, "Let's get this over with." Gable and Colbert were both dissatisfied with the quality of the script, causing a lot of on-set tension and leading to another rewrite by Robert Riskin. Colbert continued to be difficult on set and initially balked at pulling up her skirt to entice a passing driver to provide a ride, complaining that it was unladylike. Upon seeing the chorus girl who was brought in as her body double, an outraged Colbert told the director, "Get her out of here, I'll do it, that's not my leg." Colbert continued complaining every day of filming. Capra came up with the idea for the Walls of Jericho scene because Colbert refused to undress in front of the camera, puzzling, giving her nude milk bath scenes in The Sign of the Cross and in Cleopatra. Instead of using a static camera, Capra placed a camera onto a crane, enabling more tracking shots, which was in keeping with a film in which the main character spent so much time on the move. According to Capra, the movie was made in just 4 weeks, involved a lot of luck and timing, very little preparation, and a great deal of creativity which happened in the strangest of places and under the strangest of circumstances. After filming was done, Capra had low expectations for how the picture would be received. Colbert complained to a friend, "I just finished the worst picture in the world." Columbia had little faith in the film and released it without much fanfare and little advertising. Reviews were generally positive. Mordaunt Hall of the New York Times called it a good piece of fiction, describing Colbert's performance as engaging and lively and Gable as excellent. Variety reported that it was without a particularly strong plot, but manages to come through in a big way due to the acting, dialogue, situations and directing. Film Daily praised it as a lively yarn, fast-moving, plenty humorous, racy enough to be tantalising and yet perfectly decorous. New York Herald Tribune called it lively and amusing. Despite the positive reviews, the film was only moderately successful in its initial run, but after its move to secondary movie houses, ticket sales became brisk, especially in smaller towns where the film's characters and simple romance struck a chord. It was a major box office smash, Columbia's biggest hit, and almost single-handedly lifted Columbia out of the ranks of Poverty Row. Colbert was nominated for an Academy Award but decided not to attend the ceremony, convinced she would lose out to Bette Davis. After being named the winner, she was dragged off a train before she could leave on vacation and brought to the ceremony, arriving in a 2-piece travelling suit which she had on for her trip. The film won all 5 of the Academy Awards for which it was nominated, becoming the first film to win the Big 5 awards: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress and Best Writing, a feat only matched by One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Silence of the Lambs. It became the first romantic comedy to win a Best Picture and the first to win both an Academy Award and National Board of Review Award for Best Picture. And it made an immediate impression on the public. In one scene, Gable undresses for bed, taking off his shirt to reveal that he is bare-chested, starting a fashion trend amongst men. The movie also prominently featured a Greyhound bus, spurring interest in bus travel nationwide. A big fan of the film was Fritz Freeling, whose Bugs Bunny was inspired by minor character Oscar Shapley, who continually calls Gable's character Doc, an imaginary character named Bugs Dooley, and the scene in which Gable eats carrots while talking quickly with his mouth full. Other minor characters were an inspiration for Yosemite Sam and Pepe Le Pew. Over the years, the film has developed a growing reputation in part because it was one of the last pre-code romantic comedies, released just 4 months before rigid enforcement of the Motion Picture Production Code. It was adapted as a 1-hour radio play in March of 1939 for Lux Radio Theatre, featuring both Colbert and Gable, and was adapted for the Campbell Playhouse in 1940, starring Orson Welles, William Powell and Miriam Hopkins. The film inspired remakes such as Eve Knew Her Apples and You Can't Run Away. It's been adapted into numerous Indian films, 3 in Hindi, 1 in Bengali, and 1 in Kannada. The hitchhiking scene was parodied by Laurel and Hardy in Way Out West and was used by Carrie in Sex and the City 2. The wedding scene was parodied in Spaceballs and inspired the wedding scene at the end of Heartbreaker. The blanket petition used by Clark Gable was also used by Bruce Willis in Bandits and in the TV series She-Wolf of London. Although Claudette Colbert and Frank Capra had a difficult relationship on set, she appreciated his efforts and thanked him when she won her Oscar. Decades later, Colbert remained dumbfounded at the film's continued popularity and its reputation as a masterpiece of American cinema. 1934 was a good year for Colbert, who headlined 3 hit films that year that were all Best Picture nominees. It Happened One Night, Cleopatra, and Imitation of Life. Premiere voted it as one of the 50 greatest comedies of all time. It's included amongst the AFI's Top 100 Funniest American Movies, Top 100 Greatest American Movies, Top 100 Greatest Love Stories, and amongst the Top 10 Romantic Comedies. It is one of the 1001 movies you must see before you die. In 1993, it was selected for preservation in the US National Film Registry, and in 2013, the film underwent an extensive restoration. Lots of good reasons to watch this film. It's a charming comedy with many iconic scenes. The chemistry between Gable and Colbert is undeniable, the dialogue is clever and funny, and restoration copies are beautiful to watch. So, what I suggest you do is that you go to our website, find our virtual screenings page, find the link to this particular film, click on it and watch it. As always, see what you think. We'd love you to come back, let us know your thoughts about the film, and whether you recommend it for others as well. And then we're back in the not too distant future for our next classic films review. See you next time.